911 operators of Reddit. What is the stupidest reason that someone has ever called? Firefighter here. Here are a few actual calls we have been started to. Popcorn in the eye. Ghost in the attic. Possible smoke in the house. Turns out the caller was crying, which made things blurry, so they thought it was smoke. Adult with leg stuck in laundry chute. Caller dropped a cigarette on the garage floor and didn't know what to do. Fried chicken was too dry. Leg through the floor while on the toilet. July 1996, a dust storm blew in and at least 20 people called 911 to report aliens. Yes, the dust storm did look exactly like the one in the movie Independence Day that was just released. No, aliens were not invading. Police dispatch in the UK. Had someone call in because 2 squirrels were fighting in her back garden. No, we don't arrest squirrels. On a similar vein, had a recent immigrant call, had a strange and deadly creature in the back garden. On arrival, turns out to be a hedgehog. Also had woman hysterically call in about a snake in her toilet. Turned out to be Big Pooh. Here in the UK, someone called the emergency services because he couldn't find the TV remote. When I was 3 years old, my dad said I could do anything I wanted for my birthday. I took it literally and called 911. I'm the one who called. I got lost in a hotel in the middle of the night after hooking up with some dude and ended up in there in a courtyard with everything locked. The receptionist told me he couldn't find me and to call the cops. They had to get me out of there. So embarrassing. First thing I did when they picked up was apologize. Paramedic here. At the height of lockdown in the UK, I was sent to a lady who called for an emergency ambulance as her sex drive was too high. Also on my list of stupid calls. Guy in his late 30s who burnt his tongue on a baked potato. Someone who has had pain in their knee for 30 years decided at 3 AM that this was the time to get it sorted. A man in his 40s who had a nightmare. A guy who thought he might feel unwell later. Man who scratched his testicle in the night with his long fingernail. No blood. Not an operator, but back when I was 20, I was at a party where a girl called 911. I went with my roommate to this party and we both crashed there. At the end of the night, he realized he forgot his contact lenses case at home, so he took a shot glass, filled it with water, and put his contacts in. A few minutes later, the girl came into the room and saw the shot glass and down at it thinking it was vodka. When my roommate woke up and told he what she did, she got all panicked and called 911. I passed out before they arrived, so I'm not sure what happened. I was the one who had to call 911 for this, but close enough for Reddit. I was working with an idiot who one day took note that if he shot his steel toe boot on the steel toe with a nail gun, that said nail would curve around the steel toe. And this worked out for him for a while till that pesky erosion and metal fatigue thing happened and the nail went through and nailed his foot to a door frame. So being the youngest person on the crew, I got picked to make the call, and that was when I found out that there is no way to express the stupidity such as that without sounding like you are making it up. They did send an ambulance and a few officers, and at first they thought we might have done it to him. But after they did an investigation and looked through our lockers, they found that he was keeping a collection of pics of huge shits that he took, and they just kinda noped out of there. And somehow 20 years later he is still alive and now working as a safety supervisor for a large trucking company. Obligatory, not an operator, but here in the UK a guy called the police repeatedly as a UFO was hovering over his house at about the same time every night. The operator asked him to go outside and describe what he was seeing. About halfway through the description, the penny drops and the caller admits that the glowing UFO is quite possibly the moon. Honestly, it's hard to pick. We get silly calls every day that tie up our lines because people think a personal emergency or inconvenience is a life/death emergency. Here are a few recent ones. Mom turned off the internet because he was failing math class. Wanted us to force mom to turn in the internet. Neighbor's porch light was green and it was not a holiday and they thought this should be illegal. The hooker he didn't pay stole his cracker's payment and he wanted to report the theft. There was a burro, wild donkey, in their campsite in the desert and wanted someone to remove it. They ran out of gas on the highway and didn't want to pay the fee to their insurance/tow truck. Wanted us to tell the tow truck to gas them up for free. Neighbor was parked crooked in their own driveway and caller wanted them ticketed for unsightly parking. Of course the classic McDonald's is out of chicken nuggets type calls. I work in the so I'm on the receiving end of some dumb 911 calls. Most recent was a guy who shows up via ambulance at 1 AM because he twisted his ankle 3 days ago and it still hurts. The medic who brought him in was not amused. Had an elderly neighbor who called the police a few times a day. The local firefighters said they would have the calls transferred to them from the sheriff's office. Most ridiculous stuff like losing the remote, outside lights wouldn't come on, cat scratching at her door, etc. I tried to be polite, but if I walked too close to her grass on the sidewalk she would threaten to call the law on me. My cousin works as an operator and he really hasn't had any stupid stories, but one time he got a call from a woman who was absolutely livid, just legitimately hyperventilating and shit. She said that there was a group of terrorists walking around her apartment block and stabbing people. Since this is happening in a tiny Polish town, like 5 police cars show up. It was just some Turkish dude sitting at a bus stop. Caller believed his neighbor's jack-o'-lanterns were carved suspiciously. My mom was the one that called. It was the middle of the night and just me. I was 15 and her home at the time. Dad out of town and someone kept ringing our doorbell for 20 plus minimum. We were scared it was someone trying to get us to open the door so they could break in since it was 12 AM. Mom calls 911. Cops come. Turns out it was our neighbor trying to tell us that our garage door was open. The police were just like, how about you guys exchange cell phone numbers for the future? Pretty embarrassing. My neighbor called 911 at 3 AM because he was smoking a brisket and didn't want anyone to call in a house fire. Former dispatcher here and these are some of the ones that stand out. Called to ask what time it is. Wanted someone to pray the rosary with. Wanted hot firemen to come over. And so many things stuck in butts. I had one call on Thanksgiving that their oven was locked and they could not get their turkey out. It was really busy that night and we instructed them to turn the oven off and we could head over when we could. I'm not a dispatcher, but I can imagine the dispatcher thought this would take the cake. I worked on the road for a while and the guy I roomed with was a complete moron. He called 911 to ask if there were any fireworks in town that weekend since it was the 4th of July. He tried to explain to me it is a public service directory, so as long as you say this is not an emergency, they'll be able to answer other questions. Seriously, dumbest guy I ever met. Firefighter here. I have two. 1. Someone ate a chip and they didn't chew it all the way, so a small piece of the chip scratched their throat on the way down. He wasn't choking. We said drink some water, you'll be fine. But if you really wanna go to the hospital we can. We've all had this happen to us. 2. This actually happened 2 weeks ago. At 11:30 PM. Someone called because there was a lot of smoke in the neighborhood. Their neighborhood backed up to a forest, so they were worried it was a forest fire. We find the source coming from someone's backyard. We go back there, and the homeowner and his wife were burning all this dead grass and leaves in their backyard. They told us they were trying to cook potatoes. Lo and behold, in this large pile of leaves and dead grass was a box of potatoes, still in the box. Their oven worked too. This isn't a low-income area, they have money, they weren't even on drugs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.